it is a symptom. It's a consequence. I mean, it's the deconstruction of marriage by the culture of infidelity, the culture of what we call in the Manhattan Declaration, the culture of infidelity and divorce, for which same-sex partners or same-sex attracted people are not responsible. That's what caused people to lose their grip on what marriage is and reduce it to the status of a mere emotional partnership. Why should I stay in the marriage if she doesn't do it for me anymore? We accepted not only no-fault divorce, but unilateral divorce. It seemed like a progressive thing to do, right? It just seemed so sensible. We'll cut down all the muss and fuss and the lawyers and the legal time and all the tension and everything. And we'll just make it easier, not thinking, not pausing to think. It swept the nation before anybody paused to think, how will that affect the public's understanding of what marriage is, and so the understanding that people have when they enter into marriages? What effect would it have on our moral understanding of marriage and what a marital commitment really is? Well, it turns out it's had quite a profound effect, entirely negative. So we've got to rebuild the marriage culture. The same-sex marriage thing, I mean, I hope that we can preserve the conjugal understanding of marriage as the union of husband and wife. And it's critical that we do, because we're not going to be able to rebuild the marriage culture if we allow marriage to just be defined away. But on the other hand, even if we win, that's only the beginning of the battle. I mean, the real work that's got to be done has got to be to restore the marriage culture. And that means that, we've got to learn to behave ourselves. We've got to eschew infidelity and the things that break up marriages. And we have to really work for a culture in which marriage flourishes. I mean, kids are utterly dependent on that. I mean, look at the social consequences of family breakdown. Your former Archbishop Vigneron, living in Detroit, where I've heard that the out-of-wedlock birth rate may be 80%. I mean, and we know this, all the social pathology, the delinquency, the drug abuse, the crime, the violence, the incarceration that comes with that kind of father absence. And by the way, while we all suffer from the collapse of the marriage culture, I mean, I dare say probably almost everybody, perhaps everybody in this room, has had family members who have been touched by divorce, where divorce has come into the family. It's as common among Catholics as it is among non-Catholics. But the real victims of the breakdown of the marriage culture, utterly predictably, are the poorest and most vulnerable among us. It's not my neighbors or my family that's suffered the most. We can buy our way out of with our affluence, out of the most terrible consequences of the collapse of the marriage culture. But poor people can't. They bear the brunt of it. I mean, whoever inaugurated the whole free love thing and sexual revolution of the 60s has got to answer for the impact of that on poor people. And, elites, Hollywood folks, the beautiful people who set such horrible examples and who profit from the images and the harm that they do to the marriage culture, they really have a lot to answer for when it comes to poor people. Sometimes my liberal colleagues say, well, look, even if you're right about marriage, which I don't concede, but even if you're right about marriage, why do you make that such a passion of yours? Why is it such a big deal? I mean, shouldn't you, especially you as a Catholic, shouldn't you be more concerned about poverty? And I say, don't you guys get it? The greatest anti-poverty mechanism ever created is called marriage and the family. If you were serious about fighting poverty, you would be with me. You would be in the vanguard of trying to rebuild the marriage culture. You wouldn't be saying, oh, what's it matter what two consenting people do alone? That's what I have to say about that. Anyone know what I really think?
What would Musonius Rufus say? Sorry. Professor George, last night a speaker at a parish suggested that humanity is approaching an epoch of technological advancement wherein our bodies will no longer be needed and our minds will be uploaded into a universal matrix. She rationalized this state as being no different than having artificial or prosthetic body parts. How would you defend against this viewpoint?
Wow. Well, I'm accompanied here this evening by a very dear friend of mine who's a genuine expert on this stuff, Professor William Hurlbut of Stanford University, who teaches neuroscience at Stanford. And I'm reluctant to answer the question, although I'll give it a stab, simply because I'm going to embarrass myself in front of Professor Hurlbut by answering it, and since he could give so much better an answer. In fact, I'm very tempted, Bill, to call you up right now to answer the question. But Robert Nozick, the philosopher at Harvard, the late Robert Nozick, once proposed a thought experiment. He called it the experience machine. He said, look, imagine that you could have your brain removed, and you would be floating in a tank. The brain would be floating in a tank. And it would have all your memories and likes and dislikes and so forth. But what this experience machine is going to do is it's going to induce in you, in your brain, the experience of all the things you'd like to do, only you won't be doing them. You're just going to be having the experience of doing them. You want to write the great American novel? You're going to have the experience of writing the great American novel. You're not going to write the great American novel. You're going to have the experience. You want the experience of winning one of my books? For what it's worth, you're going to have that experience, right? You're not going to win one of the books. You're not going to do anything. Would you plug into the experience machine? You're going to have, in some ways, a better life, right? Because the lives we're actually going to live are going to be filled. We're going to have our successes. We're going to have something falling. Some things are going to fall short of success. Some things will be outright failures, right? This will free you of any failures. All your experiences are going to be experiences of success. Would you plug in? And Nozick says no. And I dare say he's right. Most of us, perhaps all of us, would say no. And not just because we fear it wouldn't work. It's because we understand that to be a human being means to live a life. It means to act. It means to choose. The experiential component of our activities is important to us, and it's part of the perfection of the doing of the things that we do. We wouldn't want a life where we do things but have no experience of doing them, if that's even conceivable. But we do want to do things and not just have we understand that the experience of doing a thing is not the same as doing the thing, and that we have reasons to do the thing, that it's in the doing the thing that the fulfillment of the human being occurs. That fulfillment's not just psychological state. This is another defect of the dualistic position. On the understanding that I was criticizing this evening, it is kind of hard to figure out why exactly you would not plug in to something like that. But if you understand that we're not just emotional centers or consciousnesses inhabiting bodies, that we're unified actors, dynamically unified actors, then our fulfillment is not just in the psychological component of the doing of things. It's in the complete engagement of the human being as a unified whole in the activities of a life, whether it's writing the great American novel or just sitting down and having coffee and conversation with a friend, or studying, or watching sports, or participating in sports, or appreciating art, or whatever it is that you do. So I think this and here Nozick's actually restating in a kind of modern idiom with the experience machine an old point that Aristotle had made, that to give up your identity, Aristotle raised this question to himself: would I give up my identity in return for being a person whose life, all things considered from an external point of view, was better than mine?